Well, we've come to the point of the haul out where it's time to start putting things back together again. Got the bowsprit all varnished and painted and inspected. So now we have the job of getting it back up on the boat. And that bowsprit weighs about 80 pounds or so with all the hardware on it, so it's a bit of a task. But with block and tackle and said conveniently placed tree where I have the bobstay presently attached, we managed to get it back up on the boat without scratching anything. But we got to take up a little more attention on that bobstay. Get the bowsprit just to lower down into place. And then the next fun job is getting that crank iron back on, especially getting those carriage bolts back in. And they sometimes require a little bit of persuasion there with a hammer and a large wrench. There we go. And yet another fun job is to get those, get the bolts to the strap at the heel of the bowsprit on, which hold the bowsprit in place. And I have to crawl up forward, upside down into the chain locker to actually tighten those nuts on the inside. Always so much fun. So this is it, apparently. The gold standard of hose clamps. So now let's see if they fit. Threads nicely. So another project was to replace the hoses coming from the cockpit drains to the through hulls, and specifically to replace the hose clamps. I'd always had problems with hose clamps with the gear mechanism just rusting out. So supposedly these AWAB, AWAB, all stainless steel clamps will not rust. So we'll see how that works. So I've shut the seacocks off and filled the cockpit with water. Looks like no leaks, so that's a good sign. Now let's check on the outside. And that's actually not leaking on the port side. It's actually some hamburger grease I spilled down through the through there, and it's persisting. Huh? Sounds promising. And there goes the rest of it. I don't see any water leaking in. Alright, so both the seacocks seal. Everything looks sealed, so good. So I'm going to replace a couple of the oblong pad eyes there on the cap rail, which go to the tackles, to the running backstays. Just the ones that were a bit worn. So the new pad eyes have showed up, and we'll replace the bolts going through. So just putting some goop on there, seal it, and we'll get all that put together. Shiny new hardware always looks so nice. And yet another project is to replace some of the leathering on the boom there. Now basically that leather that's right in the center of the jaws, because that tends to take the most wear. So we're going to cut a new piece and replace that. And I replaced the blocks to the main sheet there with Tufnell. I'm just gradually getting away from those old wooden blocks because they're very heavy, and especially the ones that go to the pad eyes on the cap rail. The heavy blocks keep banging on the cap rail and dinging up the varnish and so forth. So just attaching the splicing the end of the main sheet to the block there. And finally, we're down to painting the bottom, which is usually the last big project before going in the water. At least it is for me. I like to do that at the very end. And so we'll put our modified trim tab back on. So I just step it in the lower gudgeon there and then briefly tie it off. And then I'll go up top there and attach the upper gudgeon. That's what I'm doing right now. And then finally we close the middle gudgeon, which is at the top of the rudder blade there. But first, just getting a little grease in there. And here we go. I've asked them to let her hang in the slings for about 10 or 20 minutes while I paint under where the blocks were. And we're on our way back to the rudder. Next thing is to get her turned around in the right direction in these rather confined quarters here. So I got the anchor down, so I'm going to use the push boat to motor up on it and hopefully to get her to pivot on her anchor. And here she goes. And now she stops. And then she settles right back head to wind again. Alright, well, so much for that idea. Okay, so I just picked the anchor up. I'm just going to let the wind take her off. And put the motor just in slow forward there. And she's still, bow's still falling off the wind. She's coming around. Get back on the helm here. Looks like we're gonna make it. Now I still don't even have the mainsail bent on, because recall I took the boom off. So Broad Creek is a little broader here, so I'm gonna drop anchor and get all that squared away. Now I'm a little concerned. The winds are westerly, which should give us a beam reach out. However, the winds are funneling in through the entrance, so coming more kind of northwest. And a little bit gusty, so I'm a little concerned that the push boat won't be able to push her out the channel against the wind, and the channel's too narrow to tack through. So anyway, we're going to just try it here. So I got the motor gunned. I'm still able to keep the mainsail full. So here we're going to come around the mark. And now we're on our way out. And the mainsail's still filled. I got it sheeted pretty much all the way in, but it's still, at least it's not luffing. Finally, with the wind in her sails, well, she's towing that dinghy, but she's just so much happier. And on the way back to Jackson Creek, I passed the crew of True North Boatyard, towing a boat from Jackson Creek back around to Broad Creek. Yeah! Saves on gas! And now we gotta get back in through the narrow entrance into Jackson Creek. And the winds were light all day, but they're increasing. And westerly, which means on one of the legs in, we're going to be going almost dead into the wind, so we're going to need the push boat again. Now this wind is really gusting in, and I'm getting nervous, and I'm aborting. You can see the two markers there, the entrance, but I'm aborting the approach. So I thought about it a little bit. The wind seemed to have eased off, so I'm going to put her through a jibe and we'll try it again. So here we go. Now we're entering into the upwind leg here, and we don't have any room to tack. So I got that little Tahatsu just about floored there. So far we're making decent headway. And almost up to the red, and then we can bear away and sail the rest of the way in. That's better. And by the last of the afternoon breeze and the setting sun, we work our way back into Jackson Creek. where I will resume preparations for crossing the Atlantic to Ireland this summer. And I'll have more details on that coming up in the next video.